city of Lawndale, and we are recording this conversation. I am Candy Lewis, CEO of Positive Results Center, and we address trauma around intimate partner violence, sexual assault, and bullying. And we want to make sure that our children, especially our children of color, Black and brown children, have been impacted at the highest degrees by domestic violence, sexual assault, and bullying. And this month, April, is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So we want to have a real honest conversation because we've got people, okay, so the content of this meeting is being sent to a third party, it's saying. So we're sharing that, we've got this. We've got people coming in. I'm sorry, I'm reading, I'm talking. Just so you know, that this conversation can be triggering. And we want you to know that if you need help, if you need resources, we have resources for you. Just try and stay to the end. If not, if you need to get off the call, this conversation is being recorded and we can send it to you, or you can contact us back at the end. But sexual assault has happened from day one. We don't know when it originally started, but I know from as long as I can find, based in the records, based in the readings, based in the books and the storytelling, that sexual assault has been part of far too many people's histories and their realities. And so today we're talking about sexual assault. We've got a dynamic guest, Dr. Dontá Morrison, who will be joining us in a minute. You already see him there. But I want to just read to you from an organization called RAINN, RAINN. What is child sexual abuse? Child sexual abuse is a form of child abuse that includes sexual activity with a minor. And a child cannot give consent. Depending on the state that you're in, will determine the age of consent. Here in California is 18. So that means that a child cannot give consent to have sex or anything else. When a perpetrator engages with a child in this way, they are committing a crime, and that has lasting effects for that victim for years and years, and most often their lifetime. But it also affects our families and their siblings, as well as the community. Child sexual abuse does not need to include physical contact with a perpetrator and a child. So these are some forms of the child sexual abuse, and they're including but not limited to exhibitionism. That means exposing oneself to a minor, fondling, which is touching that minor, intercourse, masturbation in the presence of a minor, or forcing the minor to masturbate. I've seen conversations, telephone calls, text messages, and also producing, owning, and sharing pornography, which is very, very prevalent, and any kind of sex with a minor, including vaginal, oral, or anal, sex trafficking, and any other contact. So it's really important that we know what these things are so that we can actually call a thing, and not just hide it under the rug, which so happens far too often. So now that I've introduced myself, Candy Lewis, CEO of Positive Results Center, and I've talked about what is child sexual abuse, I'd like to introduce our guest, my esteemed friend, my esteemed He's a doctor, he's a community leader, he is an amazing man, he is my friend, Dr. Dontá Morrison.
Thank you, Candy. I appreciate that. How are you on today, first of all?
I'm good, I'm good. How are you?
I am good. I am good. I'm trying to fix my phone. I don't want to get an echo, but if it doesn't, if we still get an echo, I apologize. I'm trying to fix it on my end, but I am glad to be here for this important conversation. I think that we don't talk about sexual assault specifically amongst young boys and men often enough. So I am the Vice President of Community Wellness at Marcel Wellness Center in Ontario, California. We focus on mental health, but we also do a lot of work with youth, specifically specifically youth that are in the foster care system. As the community wellness vice president, I do a lot of navigation between the organization and the community and spark up conversations such as these that are really going to be a benefit to those who do not feel heard. So I am glad to be invited. I'm glad to be here. And I don't want to waste too much time talking about me because that'll all come out in the wash. So let's just get this conversation going.
Okay, great. So, I was doing a little research because I always love my research. And I think one of the things that I like to talk about is that every 68 seconds, someone in America is sexually assaulted. But every 9 seconds, a government agency is called out to check out sexual assault for children who have been sexually assaulted. So, what are your numbers looking like? What do you know about this? And tell us just talk to us about sexual assault in children.
I think specifically, my understanding or my involvement really comes down to young boys and men and what happens. Of course, we all know that children are subject to sexual assault and sexual violence at alarming levels. But
Yes.
what often goes under the radar is what happens to young boys and what it does to them as they evolve through their teenage years into adulthood and just the mental health ramifications that they have. And a lot of the misconceptions about how they feel, how they navigate it, how they deal with it, because we don't talk about it enough. Children, for me personally, are off limits. I don't want kids getting hit. I don't want them getting touched. Don't curse at no kid. Don't do nothing, because a child is a child. A child is not an authority figure, and a child is not in position of power. So anytime something happens to them that challenges their ability to defend themselves, I am up in arms and I take issue with it. We do a lot of comprehensive mental health services for kids who are victims of sexual assault, sexual violence, whether by persons they know or do not know. And oftentimes when we talk to young boys about it, it affects them differently because they're not embraced in the same way the young girls are. I think when it comes to young boys, they kind of reserve talking about it in depth, because unfortunately within our society, we falsely correlate sexual assault, the rape of men or whatever, to homosexuality. And we assume that if they have been assaulted, they're now going to be gay, or that is the reason why they are gay. And hopefully through this discourse we're going to have on today, we can dispel that myth 100% and lay to rest that idea that if someone has been if a male was sexually assaulted, raped, sexually violated, or whatever the case may be, that does not correlate with homosexuality. It does not lead to homosexuality, and it does not turn them gay. So I just want to put that out there from the gate.
Well, I'm glad you did, because that's one of the things that I hear so much, that a lot of parents don't want to bring their son before someone because they think, oh, okay, so now that my son has been sexually assaulted, that they're gay. Or you hear this other falsehood, let's put this to rest too, that the child really wanted to have sex, that they're the ones who, that they were the ones who started it.
Right.
This is just like the craziest BS that I've ever heard in my life.
Right. That's lunacy. I've never understood how someone can say this child seduced me.
Right.
Or this
Which is
child shouldn't have
crazy.
been wearing that revealing outfit, or this child shouldn't have been dancing like that in front of me, really, as an adult. And I think that is something that we also need to talk about, that pedophilia is something totally different than homosexuality. And that misunderstanding, or that association of homosexuality with pedophilia, is asinine. And I think it's disgusting, and it makes no sense to me. And I think that when we have these kind of conversations, we need to begin to have healthy discourse about human sexuality, sexual behaviors, so people can understand it. But there is just this idea that everything under the sun, when it comes to kids, it leads back to a person that has same-sex attraction. No, that is not true. And that power dynamic between adult and child, there is no way a child can coerce an adult to be intimate. There is no way that can happen. Children are not in position of power.
And not only that, a child, unless they have been sexually assaulted, does not know anything about sex.
Right.
Now, unless they're watching it, and that's where we as parents and providers have to really be careful how we expose our children. The things
Exactly.
that we expose them to, the music that we're listening to, the things that they're watching, even the cartoons are sexual.
Right. And I think we
So,
also need to respect boundaries that kids establish for themselves.
yes.
Oftentimes we see parents say, go and give such and such a kiss, or
Oh
go
my
and
God.
give such and such a hug. And the kid is like, I don't want to. And the
Right.
parent, instead of respecting that child and what they're discerning, they'll
Yes.
accuse the child of being disobedient, of being rude, of being disrespectful. No, you go over there and you hug your uncle, you hug your auntie, you give them a kiss. And the kid is trying to tell you, is something I'm not feeling, mom, dad, adult figure. I need you to
Right.
protect me from that person, but we don't hear what the child is saying because in our mindset, you are a child, you stay in a child's place and you do what I say do. So we've now made that kid feel like they have no voice, they don't
Right.
own their own body, and if anyone touches them, well, this is just what happens because mommy said to obey Uncle Johnny, mommy said
Right.
to obey Auntie Deborah, or whatever the case may be. And we got to
Right.
allow children to set their boundaries for themselves so they can understand what it means to be comfortable in their own space.
Right. That is so, thank you so much for starting us there because people really need to know that kids are smart and kids know when something doesn't feel right, just like we know when something doesn't feel right.
Mhm.
I have a young grandson, and sometimes his mom will say, go give grandma a hug. And he says no. And I'm like, okay, I'm cool with that.
Mhm.
Let's start teaching kids early that how you feel is important, and we don't need to force them to do anything. We don't need to force them to hug anyone, to kiss anyone, to sit on anybody's lap. And listen to your children because I don't know anybody smarter than a kid, especially kids that are under like 10. They are so super smart and they're
Right.
intuitive.
Yeah.
So they know what's going on.
That's the thing. They're intuitive and they're hypersensitive to their environment. They can
Yes.
sense when something is off. They can sense discomfort. They can sense spirits. Kids can see
Oh,
all that kind of stuff
absolutely.
because they have this innocence that has not been messed up by the things of this world. So they go into spaces with innocence. And if it's off, they're going to be honest and say, I don't like it here. I'm not
Right.
comfortable here. I want to leave. But we try
Right.
to force them to adapt to environments that they don't want to be in, which is a disservice to them.
Right. And then if a child, one of the things that we also don't do, we don't talk to kids.
No.
We have to really speak to kids and ask them, how are you doing? How are you feeling about this person? Are you okay with them? Are you comfortable with them? Instead, we just decide like, oh, look, I got to go to work. I want to go to church. I want to go to the club. I'm going to go wherever and I'm going to take you and leave you with so and so.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids will start exhibiting signs. Maybe they're going
Mm-hmm.
to start urinating on themselves when they haven't done that in a while, or they're going to act out, or they're going to have a temper tantrum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we know the kids, especially little kids, have temper tantrums.
Right.
It's okay. But start noticing as a parent, as a provider, as the aunt or uncle or whoever you are that's watching this child, how they're reacting around certain people.
Right. Exactly. And like you said, can not only talk but listen. Listen
Yeah.
with the intention of understanding and allow them to get it all the way out. Like, because you said something very key. We're in such a fast-paced environment. We're trying to get to work, we're trying to make this money, we're trying to buy this house, we're trying to do so much stuff where sometimes the child's needs can be a subconscious afterthought. It's like an after, not intentional, but it's like as long as you got food and clothes, you're okay. Let's go. Keep it pushing, keep it pushing. But the
Yeah.
kid wants to sit and be heard. And I think we as parents or adults need to learn how to just sit still and let this child get everything off of their chest and let them
Yes.
express what they feel.
Right. And you know what? This little thing right here, this this is crazy. So what I've done is, especially at my dinner table, I
Mm-hmm.
don't bring my cell phone to the dinner table.
Yeah.
And when I first walk in the house, I put everything down and I spend a good 30 minutes or longer for me, with my grandson, and I'm talking to him. He's only 18 months. I can't understand a thing that he says, but I'm setting a precedence of setting a bond with him that he knows when I come in that that's his time, that he could
Yes.
talk to me about whatever, and I'm going to be there to listen. Well,
Yes.
and I know we're busy. I know we have to cook, we have to clean. We have 3, 4, 5, 6 kids. We're taking care of, especially right now.
Mm-hmm.
Some parents are taking care of their children and also their parents.
Right.
But you have to really be accountable and responsible for your children. And I'm not saying you're not responsible, but we have to really be, yeah, intentional about our time with kids.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And then Kenny, just flipping it back on the we're talking about kids, but also gender.
Yeah,
How we raise our girls in the environment is different than we raise our boys. We raise our boys, sad to say, to be sexual.
yeah,
We shame the girls for being sexual, but when it comes to the boys, being a man is all about that sexual prowess. So we nurture that, we push that, we promote that to the point where a lot of young boys don't even know they're being sexually assaulted, that they're being
right.
sexually compromised because they think this is all a part of becoming a man. So the
Yeah.
inappropriate language, the inappropriate conversations. I even look at how uncles may talk to their nephews. Have you got some yet? Have you went out there and did this yet? Pushing
Right,
them towards this sexual, these sexual behaviors that is far too soon.
right.
Way too early. And then when they start getting involved, they don't know boundaries. So not only are they the victim, they're also the perpetrator, unfortunately. And we have to go to the root of these situations. We need to level out these discussions and these conversations about sex. We also
Mm.
need to have conversation with our kids about sex that's using the real terminology about body parts.
Man, for real.
I
A
mean,
penis is a penis.
period. That's what it is. That's what it
Yes.
is.
And a vagina is not a butterfly. It's not a woo-woo. It's not any of those
And
things.
that those are not bad words. Body parts are not bad words because your
Right.
child should be able to come to you and express what body part is being touched inappropriately. Because
Right.
if you're really busy and they come and say somebody touched my cookie, you're like, oh, just go get another one out the jar. It's more.
Right.
And they're like, but my cookie is okay. And they walk away like, well, I guess it's okay to get my cookie
Okay.
touched because you
Right.
told them their cookie is their private part. Now, anybody can touch their cookie. Anybody can taste their cookie, play with their cookie, whatever, because you were so busy that you didn't take the time to, like you said, to listen and to
Mhm.
unpack and hear what your child was saying. Mommy, someone keeps touching my cookie. you
Right.
know and I think we need to be clear. So if your child comes and says, mommy, someone's touching my vagina, someone's touching my penis,
Right.
period, there's no other word for that. Your bells are now ringing and we're going to get to the root of what's going on.
Right. And I've heard people say, I don't want to expose my children to too much too soon, not realizing that the world is exposing your children to too
Right.
much too soon. You're
Right.
actually protecting your child,
Yes.
informing your child, and helping your child to be educated on something that is really critical that could save their life. Because
Yes.
I can assure you that once your child has been touched inappropriately, their whole world changes.
Yes. Yes. And there's a level of PTSD that comes with sexual assault that we just don't talk about. You
Can we
shared.
stop there for a minute?
Sure.
Dante, there's no damn such thing as PTSD. It's CTSD, continued traumatic stress disorder,
Wow,
because
come
this
on,
does not
Candy.
go away.
Come on
This,
here.
this
I
don't
love
go
that. I'm gonna incorporate that.
You better go ahead, because
I'll
like when we start talking
incorporate
about
that.
P as in post,
It's
it's
not
like, okay, it
post.
happened and then it stopped and now it's all over with. But no, childhood sexual abuse follows you from the time it started
Yeah,
until the time you die.
yeah. You have just taught the doctor. Come on here.
I know. It's my job.
I love that, and that is true. That is true because those you're right. It never leaves. It's just like grief. You never
Yeah,
stop grieving. You're always gonna
right.
miss that individual. You're always gonna feel that loss, but you just have to navigate through it. So yes, you're absolutely right. And I think that when we talk about sexual assault, there are so many factors at play. When it comes to young men specifically, a lot of young men they'll feel like, well, maybe I am gay because I got an erection, or I something happened. Well, there's involuntary erections, and we don't teach our kids about that. So if they get assaulted, they got an erection, they may have even climaxed in the midst
Mhm.
of being assaulted. And they may
Right,
think, well, maybe that wasn't assault if I pseudo enjoyed it. If I
right,
climaxed at the end, maybe I didn't get assaulted. And we need to
right,
teach our kids about their bodies so they can know what should be happening and what should not be happening. Also, the demonization of sexual orientation causes a lot of young boys not to report it. I don't want to
right,
report it because I don't want nobody to think that I'm gay because I did climax. They may equate that to the fact that I did like it. No, sir. If you're heterosexual, you're heterosexual. You've been assaulted. You climaxed. If you're homosexual, you're
right.
homosexual. You've been assaulted. You climax.
And you climax.
We should not give favor to the perpetrator just because we had an orgasm. It was
Right,
not a welcomed advance. And we need to
exactly.
start teaching people that and let them understand were not in power. You were not in the power position. You
Right,
climaxed. It was your body responding to touch. That's all
right.
that was. But yes, that you were assaulted.
You know what? I was talking about this the other day with Wendy Gladney, talking about childhood sexual assault, that many victims never come and speak about what happened because they feel like it was their fault or that because they enjoyed it, that it wasn't assault. But first off, our bodies, we are sexual in nature.
Right.
We are made to have sex.
Right.
Even as a small child, our bodies respond. Children masturbate, children touch themselves, adults do as well. And it is not your fault if someone touches you, because we can close our eyes and have
Mm-hmm.
someone touch us in a spot and our bodies will respond.
Mm-hmm.
And children do the same thing. So, first off, let's talk to the parents. Parents, do not do not demean your child or put your child down or punish your child or whoop your child or in some cases beat or torture your children because they're touching themselves or because they have an erection or masturbate or something. That is totally normal. Okay, you can teach them that if they're going to do these things, that they can do it in the privacy of their room or a safe space. And this is not something to do out in public. So that's really important.
Candy, now you done ruffled a lot of feathers with that one.
That's
You you
okay.
you talking to people of color who are more than likely rooted in religion, traditional religion, and anything sexual is not, come on. So
Well, look,
that's a mind shift that you're gonna have to really make people understand. What do you mean touching myself is natural? What do
so
you mean it's okay to love on me? What do you mean that my body is okay for me to touch because it's my body? Candy, now you're not operating like a woman of God, Candy.
let me tell you, I'm so glad you said that because I am a woman of God, but I'm also a realist. And I'm also a person who is doing this work in the community. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I've been in church all my life, and I've seen all kind of people in church all my life. There's the pimps, there's the people who are selling their body, whether they are being forced to or whether they are doing it on their own. People are having church left and right, all up in the church. But what we're not being in church is we're not being honest.
Come on.
We're not being real, and we're also doing harm and damage. And I'm not just talking about the church. I'm not talking about a particular church. I'm talking about people,
Right.
people of color, that's Black, that's brown, that's everybody, that until we start being real and honest about what's happening with our bodies and talking about and teaching our children about our bodies and also coming forth and calling a thing and also talking about who the pedophiles are, who the abusers are, then we're not going to be able to protect our children. So yeah, I will go to hell in a handbag if that means that we can prevent some children from being abused. I
I,
don't mind. Put
I'm
me out there.
I'm I'm 100% on board with you because I think there are so many levels of sexual trauma within our communities that we don't talk about. And a lot of it starts at childhood. We're exposed to a lot of things. We see a lot of things. We experience a lot of things. And normally a lot of that stuff happens to us through people that we trust the most. People that
Yes,
we find safety in, or that should be protecting us and guarding us and watching over us. They're the main
yes,
ones violating us. And I think that
yes,
until, like you said, until we're able to have open, honest, and raw conversations about what is going on within our communities, nothing is going to shift. But how do
right,
I come and tell my grandma that her son is touching me without my
right,
grandma protecting her son, because that's her baby, and you know how he is. He been through a lot. He been in and out of jail and yada yada yada. But Nana, he touched me. Well, he
right,
won't do it again. I'm gonna go talk to him and woo wop. Well, Nana, I'm still sitting here in CTSD
right,
because, and I still got to go to the family reunion. I got to go to the functions. I got to go to the gatherings. I got to sit
right.
on the couch next to him. But this is
Yes,
the person that has touched me. Now, how do I, as a little boy, navigate this experience? How do I
right.
do this, Nana?
But you know what? And you might also have to share the bed with them, depending on where we live and who our family is. You know what? So let's just talk about it. Let's dive deep in it. It's very hard if you are a victim of sexual abuse, and especially childhood sexual abuse, to
Mhm.
find someone that you could tell.
Yes.
Wendy was talking the other day that she told people that were close to her, and they called her liar. They
Hmm.
didn't believe her.
Hmm.
And the worst thing that you could call a child is a liar.
Hmm.
You can also act like you don't hear them. And what's going to happen is that child is no longer going to trust you and most other people.
Hmm.
Because if you call me, if you, the person who loves me the most, who told me that you could come to me about anything, baby,
Anything.
I got your back. I'm here for you. And now you tell me that I'm a liar when I tell you what has happened because either A, you've been sexually assaulted, or B, like you say, this is my husband, my wife, my sister,
Hmm.
my the person that I love most,
Hmm.
or this person is providing the resources for this household. There's so many reasons why someone is not going to want to believe, but we have to do better by our kids, and we
Yes.
have to believe, but we also have to have these conversations in schools, in community, in family, on Zoom, on Instagram, so that people will hear it and understand that enough is enough. Let's
Yes.
stop this shit. Let's
Yes.
stop abusing kids. Let's do what we can. And if you have been abused as a child, get help so you can help somebody else.
But then, Candy, how do we flip that? Because I've oftentimes heard, and you're the expert in this field, that oftentimes the victim will turn into the perpetrator.
Mhm.
So
So wait,
so
before we get that far, because we going deep, deep, deep,
okay,
deep.
all right, I'll back
Let's
up.
go back.
Let me
Let's go back
downshift.
and talk about let's talk a little bit more about the misconceptions, because one of the other misconceptions, besides which you've already mentioned, is the misconception that a boy that is 8 or 9 years old that is sexually assaulted by a woman, that is cool. Boy,
Hmm.
you done just came up because you done just
Hmm.
got some. Now you a man now.
Right.
But he's a little boy.
He's a little boy. He's a little boy, and we don't look at her inappropriately. If
Right.
his babysitter, his 17-year-old babysitter, touches him while he's 6, 7, or 8 years old, it's like, wow. And then when he comes out and starts talking about it, like, yeah, she did this, she did that, she did this. He's like you just said, we're looked at him like, oh, well, it's gonna happen eventually. Well, at least it was a girl that touched you and not a boy. What? That's
Right.
all right. It's cool. You be okay. But had it been a 16, 17-year-old boy, we're gonna go out and kill him and cut his head off. But a
Mhm.
teenage female that's a pedophile or a rapist or whatever, she gets some kind of weird pass, for touching these little boys or letting the little boys touch on her breasts. or
Right.
rubbing her booty. She's getting some kind of pleasure out of it, but these are little
Right.
kids that she's exposing to all of this. But we don't look at her the same way we look at a little boy, a teenage boy that's touching little
Yeah.
boys. It's a weird
Right.
dynamic that I've noticed, and we gotta switch it to, like you just said, these are still kids, little
Right.
kids.
Right. And these kids are being abused. This is
Yes,
abuse.
it's not a
This is
rites of
what abuse
passage.
looks like.
Yeah, it's not a rites of passage. It's not a badge of honor. It is nothing we should celebrate that your 11-year-old boy is having sex with a 17-year-old, 18-year-old girl.
24-year-old,
Right.
52-year-old.
That's nothing to
Your
celebrate or to
teacher.
applaud. Their
Right.
teacher, or the teacher's
Yes.
aide.
Right.
So the same anger we get when little girls are touched, we should get the same anger when little boys are touched.
Absolutely.
It's not a gender thing, it's an age thing. These are children. They are not in position of power. They have no idea what they're doing, regardless of how much you tell them this is just going to make you a man.
Exactly. And I want to say again what you said earlier, that if a boy is physically sexually assaulted as a child by another boy or a man, does not make him gay
Right. At all.
at
At all.
all.
At all.
And sometimes you talked for a second about pedophilia. Pedophiles are people who like children. They want to have sex with children. They want to have a relationship with children. They do not see children as they see children as a love form.
Mhm.
And some pedophiles are specific to age. They want a person that is between a specific age, and some pedophiles want people that are between that are a certain gender. So a man could be heterosexual but be a pedophile and only want a boy between the ages of 3 and 5 years old.
Mhm.
So people need to understand that pedophilia is totally different versus your father, your mother, your sister, your brother, your uncle, your
Your
grandfather,
cousin.
your cousins, who are the neighbor who is just a sexual assault. They are just an abuser.
Now, Candy, what you just said, that's going to be a lot for some people to unpack,
This
because
is
they're
true.
not going to understand. How are you telling me that a grown man that likes little boys, how are we classing him as a pedophile, but not a deranged homosexual? And what
Right.
makes him different than any other homosexual? And I
Yes.
think we need to have more in-depth conversations about that, because all pedophiles are not male.
No.
There are women who like little
Yes.
girls, women who
Yes.
like little boys, but we don't
Yes.
talk about that. Pedophilia is not talked about because sadly it's been lumped into, a sexual orientation or a sexual behavior, and we don't get
Right.
to the mental health aspect of pedophilia. So
Yes.
I'm glad
That's
you brought
another
that up.
conversation.
And I'm glad you brought it up, because somebody out there right now is scratching their temples like, this woman just said that a grown A man who touches
Right.
little boys is not a homosexual. He's just a pedophile. No, but that's all about
There
that
is the
learning we got to
mental.
get. It's
Yeah,
that
there's
learning
the
we got to
mental
get.
to it.
Hmm.
And some people are criminally insane. So we're not going to go into all of that because we could be here for the next 4 or 5 days
Days.
or months talking
Right,
about this
right.
conversation. Okay, so Dante, you were just moving. I stopped you and I did not write down where we were going
I
a
had asked
minute ago.
about the perpetrator, the victim becoming the perpetrator.
The
And
victim becoming the perpetrator.
yes, and I have read that many perpetrators were actually victims at one point.
Mhm.
At one point in time, they too had been either assaulted, raped, abused, whatever terminology. And that is a question too, Candy. What is the terminology? Is it a victim of rape, sexual assault, sexual abuse? Which one do we use? Are they interchangeable?
They are interchangeable. They are interchangeable. So when we talk rape, we are talking about the forceful, either force of sexual, excuse me, of vagina, anal, or oral. When we're talking about sexual assault, that could be someone touching you. It also could be someone masturbating in front of you or forcing you to do something, or it could include pornography. So, but they are very much interchangeable. They are all illegal. Let's just say that. And the problem is that most people do not come forward. And when we're looking at childhood, we really don't know how many people are impacted, because when we're talking about children, that means that they're under 12, and we don't, the only way that we can get that information is if a parent discloses, or if that child goes someplace else and finds a protected person that will then disclose. And then there's some research that has to be done. But because that person is under 12 years old, they normally have to have a parent's permission. But when we're also talking about children, the vast majority of children that are abused are done so in their home with someone that they know. And so the parent may not want the world to know that their husband sexually assaulted them, or that their big brother or big sister sexually assaulted them. So disclosure is not done enough. And so we really don't know what the real totals are.
So it sounds like, based upon what you just shared, protecting children is not the focus in a lot of households.
Oh, absolutely not. Well, let me just say this. I won't say absolutely not. Sometimes people don't know. Sometimes people do know, but because they know, they may not know what to do. They may not know who to turn to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes people have very good intentions. They will find out that someone is abusing them. Let's say granddad is abusing the children. And once you find out the granddad is abusing the children, like you say, they're going to go have that conversation with granddad. Everybody's going to come around. They're going to support that kid. They won't necessarily go get them help, but they're going to support that kid to the best of their ability. And then they're going to say, we're going to watch granddad. We're going to make sure that he doesn't touch you. But what people need to know, that an abuser, a pedophile, anyone that is attacking children will watch that child and watch you. They know everybody's habits. They know everybody's schedules, and all they need is a second.
Yes.
And you cannot prevent an abuser or a pedophile or a rapist from abusing your children if you have them in the same space as them. It's gonna happen again.
That's it's scary, but it's necessary to know. Because I think basically what I'm hearing is that we've been giving passes throughout the generations, and it's time to stop giving passes to those who are victimizing our children, and start doing the work to make sure that our families can be as honest as possible, to really know what is in this bloodline, what's in our households, and what's in our churches. The amount of boys that have been touched by clergy, pastors, priests, or whatnot, and that continues to be swept under the rug. It continues to be ignored. It continues to be prayed about or prayed over, but we're never getting to the root of the problem. We still let these leaders stay in their positions of power and authority, where they're taking advantage of those that cannot fight back. Because we do not want to shame our places of worship. We don't want to shame the church. We don't want to bring disgrace to these edifices and whatnot. And we do that all while forsaking these children. And then we wonder why the kids do not return to church. The kids do not pray. The kids do not call on God. The kids are out there on substances. They're doing all kind of behaviors that put them at risk for HIV and STIs. They're in relationships they cannot withstand. They're walking around feeling guilty all the time, ashamed, with low self-esteem, because no one listened to them as children, because they spent more time trying to protect a system than a person. And I think that that's disgusting. I think it's disgusting. And we talk about, and just going about, these little kids, they grow into adults. and then they grow into adults that have to go through their entire teenage years navigating the trauma that happened as a child that they have been forced to suppress or overlook or even ignore. And now when they try to have healthy relationships, women wonder why can't my man open up? Why doesn't my man trust? Why doesn't my man do this? Why can't my man build healthy relationships? Because something happened to your man when he was a child. He went unheard, and then he became this hyper masculine individual to prove to himself that he was not gay. And now he's with you, queen. And he
Right,
loves you, but he doesn't know how to love you because he's
right.
never been heard and he has not unpacked all of that trauma. And I think when we
Yes,
talk about the long-term effects of childhood sexual assault, we're walking around with a nation of people who have been touched inappropriately as children and never had a chance to process it. So now we're in these spaces with individuals who all have the same experience, but
right,
they don't know who to talk to.
right. And they don't know that everybody around them had those same experiences,
Everybody.
because it feels like it's just me. It was just me who was touched by an uncle. It was just me who was
Yes.
touched by grandma, and not realizing that everybody out here, you know, back in 2012, we had a conference. Dante, I think you were part of that.
More than likely.
Stop the Pain, right? Stop the Pain, a teen summit on dating violence, sex trafficking, and bully prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a survey, and 79% of the 695 kids that showed up had been inappropriately touched. 79%. That was like unheard of to me. And that's when I realized that nobody is really paying attention. Nobody is listening. We're putting a band-aid on it. But then as I started doing more research, I realized that 82% of their parents had also been touched. Like, wait, what? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think a lot of it has to do with their parents' trauma, not really being able to acknowledge their children's trauma. And let me just bring in our good friend, Bernita Walker. She's in the house. Y'all, if you don't know Miss Bernita Walker with Project Peacemakers, you need to. She shows up. I don't know if she loves me or you loves you more, Dante, but I know anytime we're together, she's in the house. And she wrote, what we've seen is that too often those who are molested as children molest due to psychological trauma, trying to reclaim their innocence. Dr. Bernita Walker, would you like to expand on that?
It's true. We see that. They did a series on that a number of years ago where they had young people who were incarcerated or in a facility where this had happened to them, and they were doing it to younger kids because of trying to claim that back. They lost something there. And we're on the verge right now of trying to get the psychologists and a therapist to get more information about dealing with this. They're not suited, actually, to do what needs to be done. They don't talk like Dr. Morrison. They don't have a clue about what Dr. Morrison is saying. Instead, they want to label that child, oh, they're just playing the victim. No, they're not just playing the victim. This is what is really happening to them. You don't get, why do you give me the microphone? You know better than that.
We
I'm
love to
sitting here
hear
like,
from
come on,
you.
keep going. And
Right.
one thing, I just want to add one thing that I also noticed, and that we have this society of at least. So when a person admits what they went through, well, at least they didn't penetrate you. Well, at least they didn't do this to you. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. Well, how are you belittling my experience by saying, well, at least it wasn't as bad as it could, but I still did not want it to happen. So I've been in rooms in spaces where people have done that, where someone is sharing their story and a person across the room, well, at least it wasn't what I went through, because what I went through is worse than what you went through. I'd rather have what you went through. Why are we comparing trauma? And why are we trying to get trauma wins? You know, we all have been through something. So whatever I could not handle is what I could not handle. It was
Right.
traumatic to me. And I think that like you shared, Ken, thank you for breaking down the difference between rape and sexual assault and sexual abuse, because some people do try to one up somebody
Right.
else,
Right.
in their experience. Well, all he did was grope your thigh. Oh, well, that wasn't nothing. At least he didn't rip your
Right.
bra off. Well, wait a minute,
Right.
wait a minute. I still did not want my thigh groped. Don't belittle my
Exactly.
experience. And I think that's what happens to a lot of kids as they grow up. When they go through this system, when they do start sharing with their friends of what may have happened to them. Oh, well, that wasn't nothing. My grandfather came in the room when I was sleeping. He touched me. At least it wasn't your grandfather. It was just your
Right.
cousin. You
Right.
can fight your cousin.
And then that makes them think like, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. So if
Right.
something else happens, it really wasn't that bad. I could
It
deal with
wasn't
it.
that bad. It wasn't that
Right.
bad. And we have to teach our children their bodies are off limits to anybody.
Off limits. We
Anybody.
have to we have to teach our children that there are other, if someone tells you, I don't believe you, we gotta go find somebody else that they could talk to.
Mm-hmm.
But then that becomes a problem. Let's talk about some of the things that abusers do. That
Mm-hmm.
abusers will say, don't tell anybody, this is a secret.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you tell anybody, I'm gonna kill your mama.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make sure that you get taken out the home. I'm not gonna go to jail. You're gonna be the one that's gotta get out of the home, and you're gonna be with some strangers who don't love you and don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we tell of children, and then people want to know why you didn't tell me. And then I have to piggyback and say that then the parents get mad at the child. Well, why you didn't tell me? I tried to tell you,
I
but you
tried to tell you.
didn't.
I
And
tried to tell you. And we also
right,
got to be careful when we're asking children or anybody that was a victim of sexual assault, tell me what happened.
right.
I don't want to relive the whole story. Just know that I was inappropriately touched. And it's as though we want the children to explain everything so we can kind of justify, oh, that's all they did. Okay, baby,
Mhm.
that wasn't sexual assault. They was just trying to show you how much they love you or
Right.
whatever. So tell me everything that happened. If the kid comes and says, Mommy, someone touched me down here. Well, how did they touch you? What
Right.
were they saying? Were y'all playing or what? None of that should matter. If the child is
Right.
saying, I was touched inappropriately, I was touched inappropriately, and that is your call to action as the adult to defend this child. But don't try to get the child to overshare to convince you that it was assault, abuse, rape, or whatever. And that's for anybody of any age. Making people relive that experience just so you can validate if it really was what they said was, that is not a good listener. You're not
Right.
being a good resource. You're not being someone they can trust, and you're not expressing true concern. We need to
Right.
validate the feelings of the individuals who are going through these situations by saying, I hear you. I'm listening
Mhm.
to you. Share what you're comfortable sharing, but we're going to get to the bottom of this, and I'm going to help you get through this. And
And it's not your fault.
yeah, yeah, that whole blaming thing or setting a person up to feel like, well, maybe I am overthinking this because the more I talk, maybe I am like, okay, maybe it wasn't that bad.
Right. And can we also talk about, oh dang, I just lost it. Oh, can we also talk about the fact that children may not have the language to share what actually happened?
Right.
And when we're forcing them, we sometimes our face changes, we get all up in their face and we're looking angry. And kids don't know the difference between you being angry at me and you
Mm-hmm.
being angry at the situation.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm looking at you as a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, even a 10-year-old, and I see the anger on your face, now I think you're angry at me.
Right.
And so now I don't want to even talk. I don't want to have this conversation. I just want to make this go away.
Right.
And they might say, no, I'm sorry, that didn't happen. But it did happen.
It did
But
happen.
because they're afraid of the anger, they're afraid of you disliking them, they're afraid of all kinds of things that they will take it back.
Any kind of
Especially the
backlash.
father.
Yeah, any
Yeah.
kind of backlash because they do not want to be unloved by their parents or whatever. And I've actually been in that situation where a child came out the room. We were at a party and they were talking to me and they were telling me stuff that I'm like, yo, that's suspect. And they were talking in jest and I'm just laughing with them. But when they finished and walked away, I went and told the parent, I'm like, yo, your kid just told me that while they were in that room, one of the older teenagers touched them here, 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 and there. Now the kid thought it was just they were playing, but you don't play with a little kid like that. You don't touch a little kid inappropriately. But I didn't want the child to feel uncomfortable telling that. So I kept this face, but on the inside, I'm seething. Like, you've
Right.
got to be kidding me.
Right.
And I think that, like you said, we don't allow our kids the time and the grace to share their story their way because they
Right.
don't have the vernacular that we have. They're going to get the words out as best they can, and they're reading us the whole time they're sharing their story. But it's really up
Yes.
to us to go handle the situation. So,
Yes, that's true. So I want to take a minute. Let me just kind of minimize my screen again, because I want to talk about the warning signs. So child sexual abuse isn't always easy to identify. It's not obvious in some cases. And the perpetrator, as we've already talked about, can be somebody that they trust, that they love, that they respect even. But here's some of the physical signs. They could include bleeding, bruises, and swelling of the genital areas, bloody, torn, and stained underwear, difficulty walking or sitting, frequent urinary or yeast infections, pain, itching, and burning in their vagina or genital areas. And those are really important, because, or even sometimes, especially babies, if you're wiping them and they start crying all the time, they don't want you to wipe them, that could be a very big sign. Some of their behavioral signs are changes in their hygiene, such as they're refusing to bathe or they're bathing excessively, that they develop phobias, they exhibit signs of depression or continued traumatic stress disorder. Any kid who's talking to you about suicidal thoughts, pay attention, believe them, get them help immediately. They're having trouble in school. Maybe they're absent a lot. They're dropping out of class because it might be something happening either on their way to school or at school. Sometimes people forget that kids got to get to and from school, and things can happen to and from school. The inappropriate sexual knowledge or behaviors, nightmares, bedwetting, overly protective and concerned for siblings. I know some kids that are very protective of their older or younger brother or sister. It could be maybe there's a physical problem. It could also be a sexual problem.
right.
They're running away from home, the self-harm. They're talking about either cutting themselves or they're taking pills or they're drinking. They're sleeping a lot. Those are all different signs that we need to be aware of.
And I was going to ask you, Candy, in your expertise, what has been your experience with children who are hypersexual, are display hypersexual, behaviors? And some parents may think it's cute, some adults may think it's cute, but your antenna goes up. That rings your
Absolutely.
alarms. It's like that's
Yes.
not normal. That shouldn't
No.
be. How do parents look out for that? If their little
Okay.
girl, their little boy is really expressing this adult sexual behavior. And it's like, that's not the music. That's not the music videos. That's something else.
Right. Well, so as I said earlier, that we are sexual beings, but because we're sexual beings does not mean that they're going up touching people or doing certain things. Now, some kids just have more rhythm, they're dancing. That is them. But hypersexuality because they will start touching other people inappropriately. Whether it is it could be a stuffed animal, it could be a doll, it could be a toy, it could be another person or another kid. So if you see a kid that is always touching on and feeling on somebody, or maybe they're always going to adults and they want to sit on their laps, or they want them to hold them and hug them. And I find that there might be a problem. Can't say all the time there is. And every situation is different. So if you see certain things, don't automatically assume that your child is being sexually assaulted. Have a conversation with the child. Pay attention to what's going on. Who are they with, and how are they behaving when they come back from school, church, visits with siblings, or the other parent, or whoever it is. So just pay attention and start noticing their behavior before and after. I would give myself a little journal, and I'm writing things down, because I want to know that what I'm thinking is real. Right. And it's not just perceived. Yeah. And then also, if you ever have to go to the police or court or something, you've got some evidence, because let me tell you, writing things down is called evidence. Okay, but I just want people to,
I said, I appreciate that, how you just talked about it, because I just think a lot of parents don't know what to look for.
They don't know what to look for. So first off, we all have computers, we all have cell phones, Google it. But because you Google it, don't just automatically assume, oh my God, this is happening. Talk to your kid, and sit down in a quiet space with you and them. And sometimes I tell people not to have conversation in the house, because the house holds a lot of negative energy. The house holds the truth and the lies. The house holds the abuse. Take your kid outside, take a walk to the park. And while you guys are walking to the park, or maybe go get some ice cream, or go to a show, and after the show, you go have lunch and have a conversation with your kid, so that they feel comfortable and they feel safe, that they can have the conversation with you, and daddy, grandma, auntie, big brother, big sister, little brother, little sisters, not in the other room overhearing what's going on.
And and you saying that, I know we short on time, but since you opened that door, this has always been a question that for me, should you confront the perpetrator?
Well, I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no, but I'm going to say, make sure that you have all your facts to decide if you're going to have that conversation with that person. Tanya Robertson says, case by case, everyone is especially different. Every situation is different. Sometimes you may not have the conversation with the perpetrator. You may just want to go straight to law enforcement. I know as communities of color, we have
that's why I asked. I'm looking like, now
police, but let me tell you something. I'm gonna call the police. I'm calling the National Guards. I'm calling every damn body I know. And then you're gonna see me on the news because somebody has sexually assaulted my children. As you said, children are off limits, 100%. I don't even know how to fight. Okay, everybody who know me know I don't know how to fight. This is how I fight. I fight with my pen. I fight with my paper. I fight with my mouth. But I will cut a mofo if you're messing with my kids. So you have to decide.
I just got the whole visual live at 5. I'm like, I know her. I know that lady.
Right. One of the things you also have to remember, that if you do confront that person, now they are aware that you're aware. And they might change the way the situation looks. And then now they can start putting together a plan, like, oh, this didn't happen. There's all kinds of things. So we've got a question on Facebook Live from Giselle Nene Bowden. Says, what about a kid that used to be talkative but shuts down all the way and doesn't talk anymore? They're super quiet. That is definitely a sign.
That's a sign. That's a sign.
That's a sign. That's not only a sign for a kid, that's a sign for anybody who used to be talkative and wanted to go out and play and do everything, and now they don't. They don't want to go nowhere. They don't want to be around. They especially don't want to be around certain people. And they just want to be in one safe space with one person, or maybe they just want to read. They don't want to do what they used to do. That's a big
Mhm.
sign.
Even the change of the kind of clothes they wear.
Yes.
You know, even the colors of the clothes
Yes.
is now real dark colors. You know, stuff that's buttoned up to the nose. It's just all that stuff is signs. And parents, you know your child. You know your child, and you know any little thing that shifts on your child, you're going to recognize it. And it's not just aging, you know, oh, they're just a teenager now. Now, some mood changes and mood shifts, that's a result of something traumatic that's happened.
Exactly. That is so, so true. We've got a lot of comments from Facebook, so let me bring them in. Sakivu Hutchison says, excellent. This is so true. Talking about how children behave and maybe changes in them. Leilani Marie Smith says, people are into pretending to pay attention. And this is such an important subject. You know what? Let me tell you something. You can't pay attention and look at your cell phone. Okay, so be like, no, I see you. No, you don't. You're not paying attention.
You're
Put
not
your
paying
cell phone
attention.
down. I'm gonna tell you, as a parent, as a grandparent, put your cell phone down and let's pay attention to our children. Thank you for that, Leilani. Tanya Robertson says, start teaching your children from the time they can talk and comprehend that, and make it an ongoing conversation. Make
Normalize
sure
it.
that your children, know that they can come to you and
Yeah.
trust you. Like, I think the first thing that I said to my grandson was, baby, anytime you have a problem, you come to me. Whatever you want to talk about, I'm going to be here to listen. I don't want to assume.
Mm-hmm.
So, help your children, please.
Mm-hmm.
Let's help your children to be safe. Let me say this. Stop dropping your children off at your neighbor's house. Stop dropping your children off at
Right.
somebody you'd have met them 2 days ago, and they said, "Oh, you want to go out of town to Vegas? I watch your kids for you." Somebody that's all happy, go lucky, like, yeah, go ahead and bring your kids over. There might be a problem there.
Mm-hmm.
There
And
might be a
everybody's
problem
not
there.
your child's uncle.
Or auntie.
Yes.
Right. And then, or maybe those are some great people, but who's up in that house? Let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you, I'm gonna give you a quick story and then we're gonna wrap it up talking about what can we do. But I remember when my oldest daughter was in the 6th grade, and children at the school bullied her, and she finally got some friends, and this one girl was going to have a slumber party, and she's like, Mom, can I go? My answer has always been, no, you can't go to slumber parties. I don't know these people. And she kept begging and begging, and she was trying to build some friends. I said, okay, I'm gonna go talk to the mother. So I showed up at that house at 11 a.m. and knocked on the door, and the mother opened the door, and the first thing that I saw, which kind of threw me, was like right there in the entrance was the refrigerator. Why is the refrigerator right here? But okay, I'm not paying attention to that. What I did pay attention to were the three boys that were between 11 to 19 that were sitting on the couch. Okay, who are
Wow.
these people?
Right.
And she's like, oh, I really can't talk because I got to take my 17-year-old to court. You think my child spent the night there? Hell no.
No.
No way.
No.
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 Who is in that house? You don't know. Not every smiling face is a friendly face.
But that's a different generation. I didn't
Right,
spend the night nowhere growing up.
right,
My mother
right,
said, "No, you got a bed at home. You see
right,
them tomorrow." I mean, that was
right.
just I didn't grow up like that. And I thank my mom for that now. I'm looking at all the things that could have taken place had she just dropped me off because she wanted to go out to the club every other weekend. But
Yeah.
I think it's just parenting one-on-one, like we just shared, and then you just sharing the warning signs. It's important.
Right. Bernita said also another warning sign is their eating habits.
Mm-hmm.
Be aware if they go from like, oh yeah, I'm all down for the food, and now
Mm-hmm.
no. Is there a
Mm-hmm.
lot of weight gain or weight
Mm-hmm.
loss? I know some women that said that they started like this major weight gain because of the abuse that they were experiencing, and they just
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to be attractive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Tanya says also give your children the language. We talked about that. Do not, oh, no, we didn't. Tell them, you could say, do not
You
touch
don't
my
touch my
body.
body.
Do not touch my body. It's
Right.
okay to tell you, it's okay to say no.
Boundaries.
No is a good word.
Yes, boundaries.
And support from, oh, thank you, from support from
Thanks, Tanya.
Seattle. Yay. So listen, we need to wrap this up. We've been at this conversation for an hour. We've been trying to get this about an hour to an hour 15 so that we can go back to our lives, but be a little bit more informed.
Yes.
So what can we do? How can we support survivors as well as parents?
Oh, that was.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes, that's for you, Dante.
I was waiting for the audience, like, yeah, tell me, y'all.
Right, because they are all invested.
I think the main thing, honestly, what I would say, what I always tell people is to, if we hear people that are in need, survivors, parents, or whatnot, refer them to resources that are going to understand them. And I think oftentimes we pass out phone numbers and all this kind of stuff, and we have not vetted these places. As people of color, we have a specific type of language and conversation that goes forward that is not always translated in a manner that we're going to receive it or understand it. So then we leave not feeling heard or understood. And so I think it's important that we are ensuring that I know who to give to Candy. I'm like, okay, you may want to go over there, but I know who you need, because you need someone that's going to speak your language, because you ain't going to get from nobody else. So positive results, that's where you need to go. And I think it's important as community leaders and community advocates that we're vetting out these organizations and vetting out services to make sure that they're truly going to meet the need of the victims and the survivors and get them to the place of understanding that it wasn't their fault. The place of how do I continue? How do I deal with this? What is it? CSTD? Not PTSD. I'm learning CTSD because it's
Continued traumatic stress
yeah,
disorder.
it's gonna be a continual. You're gonna live with this, but we got to give them the proper resources. Someone is not gonna be saying, "Oh, it's just PTSD." I mean, you really taught me, Candy, on today with that one. This is not PTSD. I'm not gonna just say that's the past. Let's keep looking forward and move on. No, this is something that I am dealing with. It's in my relationships and all that. So making sure we give people access to resources that are gonna speak their language, that's gonna understand their situation, that's gonna know what it's like to be a part of the Black family and the Black family sweep everything under the rug experience. The Black family, let's all go to church and pray it away experience. It's just different approaches that we as Black people, have to life that is not often understood. So we need people who's going to talk to us in our language to help us realize the next steps. Also, when it comes to people who identify as LGBTQ, if you are a person of faith, if you are a believer, and your gay child comes to you and says, I was assaulted when I was 8 or 9. Oh, that's why you gay. Let's get you to pastor. Let's get you to church. We're going to pray this thing off of you right now. Now I know why you gay. No, those are totally different situations.
Two different things. Two different things.
Two different things.
Can I just say real quick? Love your baby.
Please.
It matters not their sexuality.
Right.
It matters not their sexuality. Love your child because they are children and they are yours.
Yes.
And because they choose to be, or because they are whatever, whether they are they or them, or are he or she, or queer, or trans, or poly, or bi, or whatever, they're people and they get a chance to love just like we do.
Right. And just because they identify something you don't understand, that still does not give anyone the right to invade their personal space. So if they say
or demean them.
Right. So if they say they've been sexually assaulted or abused, don't say, well, if you wasn't gay, the man wouldn't have stepped to you. What did you just say to me? And I think we have to understand that, like you just said, we're dealing with people and experiences and boundary breaking and all of that. So go back to what Tanya said. Do not touch my body. That should be a t-shirt. That's a t-shirt.
And tell your kids they can say it loud. But let me just say this also. And I want parents, I want community to understand that if a child is sexually abused as a child, the likelihood of them being further abused when they get older increases significantly, like 69%. I don't know, almost every person that I know that tells me that they were sexually assaulted as a child, or they come to me and they say that they have been sexually assaulted at 14, 15, 19, 20, 22 years old. Almost all of them have told me that they were also sexually assaulted as a child. So if we want to stop, if we want to prevent this invasive behavior, then we have to create awareness.
Yes.
We have to have these conversations. We have to call a thing. We
Yes.
have to be real with it. We have to know that this is something that we have to stop. It is
Yes.
no longer okay to sweep it under the rug, act like we're going to watch Papa or Grandma or Uncle or whoever it is, and know that there's nothing that's going to look, you can't look at a person and say, they're not an abuser. They would never do this because of their job, because of who they are, their status in the community, the clothes they wear, how much money they make or don't have, if they're on drugs or not, or alcohol or not. That matters not, because abusers look like everybody.
That's the benediction.
Mm.
Pass the plate. That's
Pass the plate.
That's the benediction. Abusers look like everybody.
Abusers look like everybody.
That's
so it. Parents, community, friends, caregivers, let's protect our children.
Yes.
And also, if you've been sexually assaulted, if you've been abused, get some help. It's not too late. You do not have to live feeling like there's, why should I do this now when this happened to me 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 60 years ago? There's always someone that can help you. We want you to live a life full of joy.
Yes.
And because you have been abused does not mean that you can't find joy.
Yes.
Also, as Wendy Gladney says, with Forgiving for Living, that she forgives, but she doesn't forget.
Come on. Come on.
Don't forget. Don't fall asleep at the wheel and don't let the rooster in the house with the chickens. Watch your babies and know that there's some people that are not protecting your children. They are preying on your children. And you said it earlier, Dante, you said praying. So just because I'm PRAYing for your children does not mean that I'm not PREYing on them also.
That part. And to my brothers out there, if you have been sexually assaulted, if you have been abused, if you're still walking around with the trauma of what happened in your childhood, there is help out there for you. Black men, Latino men, Asian Pacific Islander men, there is help out there for you. You do not have to go through this alone. You do not have to wonder if you are the only one who's experienced this, because you are not. Do not let it question your masculinity, whether you are gay or straight. The fact that you were touched inappropriately by somebody as a child has nothing to do with your sexual orientation. So there is help and there is healing out there. And I know that Candy has all kind of resources for you. Do not be afraid to reach out to a Black woman to get help for whatever you are dealing with. I know oftentimes as men, we don't want our sisters, our queens, to know that we are hurting, that we are wounded, that we are bruised. But this Black woman right here has your best interest at heart. So please reach out to the Positive Results Center. Say, listen, I watched the show. I'm going through. Can you just give me a number of someone I can talk to? Don't go through this by yourself. You owe it to your family, to your wife, to your husband, to your kids, to whomever, to deal with that, unpack that, so you can live your best life. Do not let your perpetrator win.
Wow. Man, you said something right there. That's so true. Thank you so much for that love, not only for our agency, but for the love that you just shared with millions of men that need to hear that. And also for the sister queens that are listening, for you ladies, if you are dealing with this about your child or your boyfriend or your husband, don't blame them. Don't shame them. Seek help for them. And they may not be ready today. So don't keep pushing them and hammering on it to the point where they no longer hear you. Just make space for them. Let them know that you are there. And when they are ready, that because they know that you're there, you can say, hey, I've got the resources, but when you're ready, I'm here for you. So Dante, I really want to end on that, but I can't. Because I mean, what you said was, we could have wrapped it then, but I do have to bring these last few comments in. Facebook Live, Miss Brady says, when your child tells you that someone touched or something, did something to them inappropriately, believe them. It takes a lot of trust and courage for them to reveal the abuse. Let me say that again. It takes a lot of trust and courage for them to reveal the abuse, but when they're not believed or they're blamed, they will shut down. They will become silent. They will become angry. They will become resentful, and they will never express their feelings openly again, not only to you, mom, but also to their partner,
Right.
be it a man or a woman, as they continue to grow. And Tanya Robertson says that she started an organization pre-pandemic called Don't Touch My Body.
Listen.
Don't touch my body. Oh my gosh. We need to get that information out to everyone.
Please.
Sakina says, appreciate the critique of the complicity of organization, religion, or organized religion in homophobia, transphobia, and silencing youth, Black sexual abuse survivors. Dr. Morrison, this was good. Crystal, from Dante, or to Crystal, from Crystal, for Candy and Dante. We have lots of thank yous and great topics, and that's pretty much it. So listen, Dante, can you share with everyone again, one last time, who you are and how people can reach you
Sure.
and the services that you offer?
Sure. I am Dr. Dontá Morrison, the Vice President of Community Wellness at Marcel Wellness Center. We are a wellness organization in the city of Ontario, but we have 10 locations throughout Southern California. We focus a lot on mental health. We focus also on foster youth, immigrant children. We do a lot of work in that space. My job is the community wellness, over community wellness. I do a lot of talks in the community about health, sexual health, mental health, physical health, do a lot of wellness conversations and spearheading talks such as the one we had on today. If you want to learn more about Marcel Wellness Center, just go to www.marcelwc.com. That's MARSELLWC.com. Or you can also just follow me on social media on Facebook Live, Instagram, and YouTube, or go to my website, www.dontamorrison.com. You'll see all the other stuff that I do outside of Marcel Wellness and whatever. I'm also licensed clergy, so I am a minister within the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship. I go to Church One Ministries in the city of Long Beach. So if you want to come to church, meet me on Sunday in Long Beach at Church One Ministries. And I do a lot of other amazing things. So just check me out. Candy, as always, thank you so much for always thinking of me for these kind of talks. It's so important and it's so necessary. And I just hope I did the show good.
Oh, you did that. You know you did. You know you did that.
Iron sharpens iron.
Okay, I'm going to say it. You did a fantastic job. I will be getting in contact with you. I have to bring Candy along because you guys working real good. And I've got a lot of things going on that I'd love to have this group right here, this duet right here to speak on. So thank you. I love you.
Bless you. Thank you so much.
You know we love you, Dr. Bernita Walker with Project Peacemakers. So on that note, Dante, I want to say thank you again. This was a great conversation. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your knowledge and your skill set. You are my friend, but you are a dynamic community partner that always spits the truth. Thank you. So I'm going to end this conversation with knowing the facts. Knowing the signs, knowing what the truth is so critical to the success, to the health and the wellness of our children. We didn't even talk about their mental health because just so you know that when abuse happens, that if we don't address it, it will affect their mental health. So protect your children, know the signs, do the best that you can, and be aware. Pay attention. Love your children. Love yourself to get the help that you need, and know that we, Positive Results Center, are here to support you and to share the resources. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.